I remember being up on the stage. Two of our young people, I just introduced them to sing a duet. No sooner had they got up to the microphone to start their singing, and I heard what I thought were firecrackers going off. I quickly realized they weren't firecrackers and that we were being attacked.
The doors banged open and I still thought, gosh, it's the wind.
At first wasn't quite sure what to make of it. When the machine gun fire rang out and when the grenades started going off, we knew we had to take cover.
I could still remember two guys with balaclavas, and then I heard the shooting.
I felt something skim over my back, but not realizing that it was actually a bullet, that it caught my back, it caught me in my lower back, and it travelled along and burst out.
One of the perpetrators lobbed a hand grenade up the aisle, where my parents were taking cover.
My brother-in-law Raymond, he said to me, there's something wrong with Myrtle, look at her. And I looked and said, what's wrong? She just mentioned my name. And I lifted a blouse open and the hole was about 3 millimeter, pierced through her heart.
They were still firing and lobbing hand grenades. And I can remember thinking as I walked back up to the pulpit, I was probably about to die. Because the moment I started speaking, I would be identified, I would be singled out, and they would shoot me. But I didn't process it. I was so anxious about the congregation, and I did feel responsible for the congregation.
Only when I heard Ross say, "Get down," did I actually react.
Again, in God's sovereignty, if I hadn't ducked at that split second when I went down, because of Ross shouting to get down, I don't believe that I would be here, and I believe a bullet would have gone straight through me.
Somebody in the back of the church had a gun and shot back at the perpetrators and hit one of them in the hand, which made them turn around and flee.
There was like this deathly silence, and then all of a sudden, afterwards, then you just start hearing screams and cries for help.
I had no idea that at that stage that my mom was hit, and it was only when a few minutes afterwards when my family was calling to me to come to my mom's aid.
I got up and my husband was still on all fours, but further out of the pew. I was later to learn that he had been shot twice and both bullets would have put him into shock and killed him.
As inquisitive as I was, I came into the church and I don't think it was the right thing to do. I felt sick, because then I saw the bodies strewn across the benches.
On that Sunday, we returned from London. But when I walked through that door and I saw the bodies lying on the floor and the pews blown up and the groups of people huddled around each other, I cannot explain to anyone what went through my mind.
That night at the church, it was amazing. It was like a war zone, but there was peace in the church. No one shouted and carried on and everything that, and I thought to myself, it's amazing how God has actually worked through the lives of people in there.
I also had absolute assurance that night that if I had died, I would have gone to be with the Lord. And it was just that deep, deep conviction that God was with us.
What blows my mind still today is the overwhelming love that was displayed by people, not just from the church, but from the Church of Christ. Not just St. James, but people all over the world. There was an overwhelming sense of love, support, that one just looked at it. It was just an amazing testimony to say that to the rest of the world, that we are Christians, and despite this event is not going to tarnish our testimony and our ambassadorship for who Christ is.
On that night, what stayed with me was just the caring part, or the wanting to help, irrespective of who the person was or whether you knew him or not, but just being there for each other.
What was remarkable was the congregation's response. The response was one of prayer for those who attacked us and even love for our enemy.
Well, the message of forgiveness, if you go back and Google it, it was the message of the day. It took the country by absolute storm. And it was a counterbalance to what was happening in the rest of the country.
In order to truly understand forgiveness, you have to have experience through forgiveness. And that's what Christianity is about. If it was just up to my own feelings, that probably wouldn't be a natural response.
What happened to us could in no way even come near what happened to Jesus on the cross. What happened to Jesus was the worst outrage the world has ever seen, when he suffered as a criminal for us, and the wrath of God was placed upon him, and he became our substitute, becoming guilty for every sin I've ever committed, you've ever committed, on the cross, and taking that voluntarily upon himself. The greatest sufferer of all. How can I not forgive you? I can't explain this to you because I feel like I want to weep every time I tell it. The pulpit was still up in those days, and the pulpit had the word eternity on it. And I got up to the pulpit not knowing what was I going to say to these people. They're all sitting here. And as I got into the pulpit, I just suddenly felt that if I put my hand out like that, I would have touched Jesus.
The fellowship and the friendship and the new friendships, Christian friendships that I had was phenomenal. I mean, and how people came alongside and how they helped in every which way. The provisions, it was amazing, and the church was packed.
Three or four of my mom, my sister, a very close friend, two friends of mine, accepted Christ in their life.
In that year, I believe 1,000 people came to Christ.
God took one church, he put it through the fire, and then he put it on display. And as a result of that, the gospel was spoken to people in the furthest corners of this land. It was the greatest evangelistic opportunity that South Africa has ever had, was the massacre.
My relationship with God, with the Lord Jesus, was not affected negatively at all. In fact, if anything, I became more aware of him, more aware of his presence, more aware of his sovereign love, and more aware of my dependence on him.
We can all testify that the Lord has used it to actually deepen our faith in terms of who he is.
God never promised that our life as a Christian would be easy, but he uses that to strengthen your faith, and he definitely used it to strengthen my faith.
I don't think there was once that I blamed the Lord. I believe it was the sin of man, and I also believe that the Lord stopped it at the time that he did.
God uses these circumstances in our life to continue strengthening us for his purposes and his glory.
You have to be open when God calls you. To use him for his glory, not for yours. And I can just give him all the thanks and glory, and that's it.
The relevance of what happened is to help us think about suffering in the Christian's life. And we need to understand that we are not exempt. The big difference is that while we wait for the second coming of Jesus and the new heaven and the new earth, when there will be no more injustice, no more suffering, no more death, no more tears, no more pain, while we are waiting for that day, we are going to suffer. With regard to the new South Africa as Christians, I think the big lesson that I personally have learned, I can't speak for others, is that it's easy to talk about reconciliation. For reconciliation to happen, it's a different story. And the way to make it happen is not by talking about it. The way to make it happen is you have to address the heart. And reconciliation is impossible, real reconciliation, in my view, without the love of Christ.